evening, everyone, and welcome to Dialogue with the Diaspora. I am Diane Haylock. It is truly a pleasure to have this platform to dialogue with so many Belizeans living abroad who are making waves in diverse fields across the globe. But it is even more special when my guest is a former student of mine. Dr. Avery August is professor and former chair of the Department of Microbiology and Immunology at Cornell University. He's currently HHMI professor and vice provost for academic affairs. HHMI is the prestigious Howard Hughes Medical Institute. And in 2017, Dr. August was one of 14 leading scientists who were named HHMI professors, an award that recognizes excellence in research and education and empowers recipients to explore new approaches to important challenges in science education. His previous position was as Distinguished Professor of Immunology in the Department of Veterinary and Biomedical Sciences and Director of the Center for Molecular Immunology and Infectious Disease at the Pennsylvania State University. He received a BS degree in medical technology from California State University in Los Angeles and a PhD degree in immunology from the Weill Cornell Graduate School of Medical Sciences. In a recent spotlight, Dr. August in 2014 was awarded the Ernest Everett Just Award from the American Society of Cell Biology, a prestigious distinction awarded to Black, Hispanic, and Native US researchers for outstanding scientific achievements. Avery, it is with tremendous pride and pleasure that I welcome you to Dialogue with the Diaspora this evening.
Yes, it's I will say the pleasure is actually mine. I think I just lost. The pleasure is actually mine. I've seen the show and I've wanted to be on it, and now I'm here. This is the catch of the lifetime for me.
Well, I'm so glad we were able to get you on. I saw the post about Black History Month, and there was a little chat going on with a couple of your former classmates, and I managed to tune in to the chat. But yeah, Avery, it is a pleasure to have you here. But the place we like to start with our show is to actually take people back to where they came from, right? Your being in Belize, school, family, connections, and so forth before you actually migrated. Let's start there.
Yeah, this is taking me back. So I lived in Belize City. Spent some time in Mango Creek as a child, but grew up largely in Belize City. Went to St. John's Primary School at the time. I think it's now part of Anglican Cathedral College. And then also went to St. Michael's College and finished up and started sixth form at what was the time Belize Technical College. At the time, after 1 year, I migrated to the US, to Los Angeles, California. And so many of my formative years were spent in Belize, and I still have very, very fond memories and friendships that I formed during that time there. I always say to people who ask, I could not have asked for a better childhood growing up in Belize.
Indeed. So what motivated the move to the United States? Was it to study further or family migration? What was happening there?
Yeah, I have to say, I wasn't happy moving to the US. I really enjoyed that it's hard to move to a new country when you're a teenager, when you form those friendships that should be lasting in your lifetime. My mother had migrated to the US when I was 4, actually. And so, this time period of me moving to the US right after sixth form, or first year of sixth form, was finally when our sort of green card papers came through. So we waited that long to be able to move to the US. And so at the time, it was sort of, in a sense, forced on me with excitement, but also not very happy about the move.
What was that journey like for you in the US? School, career? I mean, because I guess once you got there, you inevitably wanted to then go on to pursue higher education.
Yeah, I have to say that one of the things that really guided me in my full journey is this idea, again, formed in my time growing up in Belize, of wanting to do the best and also wanting to get, in essence, the highest educational credentials I could get. Moving to the US, that transition was tough. Completely different culture. We speak English, but, it's not the same as when you move to the US. And you sort of have to adjust. And just thinking that, frankly, that the streets are paved with gold when you move to the US. And, it's not. It's a different country. It's a richer country, but it still has its issues. So that transition took some time. And actually, when I moved to the US, my mother put me in the 11th grade because of my age.
Because you were what, 18 or so?
No, I was younger. I think I was maybe 16 or 16 and a half, something like that.
Okay.
And so, that's when people are in the 11th grade in the US. And so there I was, put in the 11th grade. And I ended up dropping out of the high school because I was bored. I couldn't find my place.
So you went from first year sixth form to 11th grade in the United States system. Wow. That's correct.
Yeah. So there was a couple of years there where I was really trying to find my way, but I think it was sort of a formative experience for me as well.
So that means you did 2 years in high school then?
I did 1 year in high school here in the US.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Because we you usually will finish in the 12th grade. So I spent 1 year in the 11th grade, and then left and took what's called a general education degree. It's an equivalency degree for those of you who haven't graduated from high school in the US.
And then did you go on to university right after that, or?
Yeah, so that's when I decided that I wanted to go to university. And so, I started at a community college here in Los Angeles, intending on sort of going to medical school because I was very interested in science, biology particularly. And at the time, that's the only thing I knew you did with a biology degree. You either become a teacher or you go to medical school. And so I went to community college, which is a 2-year process here in Los Angeles, in the US.
And then from there?
From there, I transferred to California State University, where I eventually graduated with my bachelor's degree in medical technology. But that was also a very formative experience because, in between that time from community college to university, I struggled. I was working to pay my way. My mother was extremely supportive, and I have to say, she's my hero in everything that she's done to get me to where I am and to get me and my siblings to where we are. But she wasn't very helpful. She hadn't gone to university. And so while she was supportive, I had to sort of figure things out. So I was working while also going to university. My grades suffered significantly, and it was because I came in contact with a really kind professor who really had a conversation with me and sort of said, what is it that you want to do? And that's when things changed.
This was then in your last 2 years of university, or?
Yes, this was in my last 2 years. Actually, the last 2 years of university, I had that conversation, and he took me and introduced me to research. And once I started doing research, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to go to medical school. I wanted to just be in the lab and experience the thrill of discovery, which I still experience to today.
What do you think it was? What was that particular kernel that caused that professor to reach out to you and have that conversation with you, to steer you in this direction?
Yeah, I think I've spoken to him about this actually, and he actually, in the end, he's now retired. He wrote a memoir, which he published, and he writes the story of his discussion with me in his memoir. So it struck him as well. I was not doing very well because I wasn't really paying attention to my classes, my studies. I was working, but I took his class, and I asked really insightful questions. And I did well in his class, and so he reached out and he said, this is very strange. Your past grades don't indicate that you would do this well. What do you want to do? It's clear you can do this, and that was the change.
That's interesting because I having taught for a number of years, I know that oftentimes students just get pushed aside, or not really getting the kind of support and encouragement that they need to go on. They're failing, they're not doing as well. And so, they just look at it and think that maybe this person is just not bright enough, So it's really, really great when you find a teacher or professor like that who then sees something there, and decides to pursue it with you.
Yeah, and I should call him out because he really deserves this, and I've told him this.
Yes, what's his name?
To his face. Dr. Costello Brown. He's a professor at Cal State LA. He's now retired, but he was so kind. And as you say, it's easy for teachers to sort of look at a student and say, they're not making it, they can't do it, and I will say it's one of the things that has guided my philosophy of some of the things that I've done is that, there are students who may seem as if they can't do it, but there's a kernel there that you can recognize. And if you work with that student can turn it around and be very successful, because certainly someone did it for me.
Good. So then you moved into medical research and then immunology. Why immunology?
Why immunology? So I took a course as part of my undergraduate degree in immunology. It's one of the required courses for my degree. And I was just fascinated by this study. It was the first time I'd been exposed to it, that in essence, your body has developed a system that allows it to recognize anything you're exposed to in terms of infections, viruses, bacteria, even before you actually get exposed to it. So there are all these components within the immune system are really poised and ready to respond, even if you never see it in your lifetime, but they're there and ready to respond. And so I really wanted to understand that more. And so, even though at the time my university did not have professors who did research in immunology, I knew I wanted to do research in immunology. And so that's why I went to graduate school to pursue a PhD, a Doctor of Philosophy in immunology.
At that point, were you able to get scholarships, or you still had to continue to work to push your way forward?
Well, that was the other thing that was really a pleasant surprise. As once that Professor Brown brought me into the fold, I was introduced to this whole body of knowledge about how to advance in your academic career. It turns out, in the U.S., if you get a PhD in a STEM field, they pay your tuition and they give you a stipend. So I had a living stipend, and they paid my tuition, which at a university like Cornell is very expensive. It's a private school, but I didn't have to worry about it at the time. So even though as an undergraduate student I was working to pay my tuition, once I moved towards getting the PhD, that was all covered.
I understand that having acquired your PhD in immunology, you went on to conduct some very interesting research that resulted in significant findings, for breast cancer. Over the many, many years that research is being done about breast cancer, it just seemed to be that elusive, disease that they just can't get the handle on. But you went on to do some interesting research in that area. Talk with us about that.
Yeah, so
the research and the findings, actually, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when I finished my PhD, I wanted to do some work in a different area from where I was originally working on, just to broaden my expertise. And so I spent some time at a graduate university here in New York called the Rockefeller University. And there I worked with Professor Sabura Hanafusa. And one of the things that what I was working on is a gene called BRCA1, B as in boy, RCA1. And this gene, which we abbreviate BRCA1, when it's mutated in both men and women, but largely in women, it increases your chances of getting breast cancer. And at the time when we started working on this gene, we didn't, it was discovered and we didn't know what it actually did. So it was this gene that was identified as it was mutated in people who had breast cancer, but nobody knew what it did. And so what we decided to do is we developed a way to try to understand exactly what this gene did. And so we did, it took us about 2 years worth of research at the time. And what we discovered was this gene, this BRCA1 gene that increases your chance of getting breast cancer when it's mutated, it actually travels from inside the cell into the nucleus of your cell and binds to your DNA. And in doing so, it ensures that the cancer doesn't develop. So it acts as a brake for the development of breast cancer. And so when it's mutated in people, mutated meaning it no longer functions, then that unleashes the cell to then develop into eventually a cancerous cell. And so now that discovery is now used to actually diagnose people to determine whether they have higher susceptibility for developing breast cancer, which then changes how your physician will then treat you. They'll follow up with more frequent mammographies. And in some cases, most famously, Angelina Jolie, the actress, she identified that she had the mutations and she decided that she would do a preemptive mastectomy so that she didn't develop breast cancer. Wow. So it was a really important finding.
How did you feel about this, Avery? I mean, being a part of this very important research.
To be honest, when you're making these discoveries, you really don't know how they're going to be used. I mean, at the time, the thrill of the discovery is the thing that keeps driving me. This idea that you are discovering this for the very first time in the universe, that you are understanding this problem that we didn't understand before. And, at the time, we didn't think about, how this was going to be used or what were the implications. We just knew that this was an important finding. So it's been really, really a pleasure to see how, I no longer work in breast cancer, but to see how that field has developed and expanded and really have become so important clinically.
So where did you go from there? Because you said that you no longer work in that area. I mean, is there other research that you got involved with then?
Yeah, so since then, I decided after doing some research in breast cancer, I decided I really still had a huge fascination with how the immune system worked. And so, when I took my first faculty position as an assistant professor at Penn State, I set up my research lab to investigate various areas of understanding the immune system with a focus on lung inflammation for a number of different reasons. So, lung inflammation develops with people who have asthma, with COPD, and that's a huge problem, particularly among communities of color, not only here in the US, but as countries develop, we see more and more in communities of color. And so that drove my interest. And then also this sort of idea that many of the infectious diseases of our time are respiratory infections. If you think about most recently, COVID-19, it's a respiratory infection, and the same process is applied there with regards to how the immune system responds. And so we've been working and made a large number of discoveries, some of which are moving into the clinic with companies who are developing particular therapies based on the discoveries that we've made. And now I consult with companies, with their efforts to try to move some of their drugs into the clinic to treat not only things like COVID-19, but things like COPD and asthma.
You were one of 14 scientists who received the HHMI, one of our Belize boys being one of those 14 people. What was that all about? What is it that that caused them to name you as one of these 14 professors?
Yeah, that was probably one of the most exciting times of my recent career. Aside from getting my degree, certainly professionally. It was an interesting process. It's a very, very competitive process. It's the 3-stage process that you put in your application to be one of these professors, and it's selected by it's reviewed by a committee of people who I don't know, but who are in your field experts. And then you're invited to HHMI, which is actually the richest medical research institution in the world, I think. I think they have billions of dollars that they use to fund medical research. You're invited to their facilities, beautiful facilities, and then you're invited with 50 other people who've made the second cut. And then each of you know that only a smaller number of you are actually going to make it. So you're there with your competitors, and you have to give this 15-minute presentation to them. And each of you are seeing the other's presentations and then judging each other. And then, a month later, you get the call that you've been selected as one of the 15. It was amazing. It was long odds, but I was really excited. And what that came with was $1 million for me to do whatever I felt that I wanted to do with regards to science and science education and research. And I'm still trying to spend that money, not personally.
Wow. This was way back in 2014 that you got
This
the
was
award,
actually
right?
the money. I got the money in 2018. So the competition
2018.
started earlier, but eventually I got the money in 2018. Yes.
Okay. The process took several years.
Yes.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really outstanding. Well, unfortunately, I need to take a break right now. So viewers, we'll be taking a very short break. Please stay tuned. Welcome back to Dialogue with the Diaspora. Dan Haylock here with you again. Tonight, my guest is Dr. Avery August, a Belizean American scientist, professor of immunology and vice provost for academic affairs at Cornell University. Yes, Avery, so I want to focus a bit on maybe what would have been some of your main challenges you faced on this journey to becoming this well-respected scientist from Ivy League institutions in the United States. I mean, I'm sure it was not easy peasy, really, huh?
No, you can say that again. I mean, I have to say, and I'm going to call her out, my mother, Alice Robinson, Alice August, who, in her coming here, when she did, she provided that opportunity. We always say that, there are always alternate paths, but this is the one that I'm in. This is the one that I ended up being on. So I do have to make sure that I call her out. The challenges started, when I came here, the transition from living in Belize to living here, the finding my way around trying to even get into university. Didn't know what that process was. And I told you earlier about, this period of time between when I transferred from the community college to California State University, where I struggled because I was working and trying to figure out what I needed to do, had no direction. Had those mentors, both those who are known to me, but also people who selected me for things that I didn't even know I was being selected for. I would say that some big milestones came, when I was doing my PhD, which is a tough road. I mean, it took 5 years. It's not easy. You're tested, every year. You have to discover something new in order to get your PhD. What that means is that you have to know the field very well. And so you go through this process where you're grilled on your knowledge of the field before they allow you to move forward. Once I made it through that, I for a time in graduate school doing my PhD, I was going to leave because I felt, this is too hard. But again, I kept remembering, why my mother brought us here and why she came here for better opportunities. And so I felt at least I should get the PhD, and then whatever happens after that happens. And then, just, frankly, being Black in the US, there certainly you have opportunities being in the US compared to other countries like Belize, but there are also challenges that you face, everyday living with interacting with the police, the expectations and frankly, the stereotypes that people have of someone who looks like me. When you walk into a room, nobody expects you to be a scientist. Nobody expects you to be able to do what you do. And so having to work against some of those things as well has been a challenge. And I keep coming back to the reason that I do it, which is the thrill of excitement, but also not wanting to let down where I came from.
Great. The whole area of science and getting young people to pursue careers in science, and in fact, there is a major underrepresentation of people of color, minorities in this field. I understand, however, that you've been doing some good work in this area, mentoring minorities to encourage them to enter the scientific field. Perhaps you could share some of that work with us?
Yeah, one of the reasons, and as you mentioned, I've been doing that, for as long as I've been able to. And the reason is, for the story I told you about Professor Brown, and someone did it for me. Pulled me out of a classroom, even though I may not have been the student that they would have selected, and gave me the opportunity, opened those doors, and let me see what was possible. And so I've spent, my career, in addition to doing research and trying to understand the immune system, but also trying to increase the number of students of color who go into STEM fields. In a number of programs over the years, when I was at Penn State, I built a program called Bridges to the Doctorate program, where I worked with a historically Black university here in Mississippi. And there we built a program so that we can bring students from those universities that also lacked, a clear path to how they would get a STEM PhD, and brought them to the university and they can get their PhDs. And actually, I was just back at Penn State yesterday, and I met one of those students who were in that program, like you, Diane, meeting a former student and being able to catch up with them and really excited about their trajectory. That's one of the programs that I've built over the years. I built, 5 or 6 programs that with the goal of being, increasing the number of students who come from underrepresented backgrounds to do more science and STEM and continue to mentor those students. I chair a steering committee that runs the largest meeting for undergraduate students, for minority undergraduate students in STEM every year. It's called ABRACAMS. And I chair that steering committee and have been doing that for 7 years now. And there we provide opportunities for students of color to really see what it's like for someone else who looks like them to be a scientist. And, it's really an amazing meeting.
That's important. Of course, we have a similar challenge here in Belize where enough young people are just not interested, or they're not pursuing studies, careers in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. What would be your advice to attract more young people to the scientific field? And of course, when I talk about young people, for me, it's also important to even underscore the importance of young women doing this.
Absolutely. One of the things that I've been really passionate about is not just increasing the number of students of color, but also women. Who are underrepresented in many areas of STEM. One of the things that I've tried to do, in mentoring high school students, middle school students, college students, PhD students, some even faculty, is, making the relevance for why they, if you're passionate about discovery. Why doing a STEM degree or exploring STEM is so important for a career, the things that you can do with a STEM degree. I talk about, the excitement about working in STEM, frankly, just we need people who come from these backgrounds because decisions are being made. Medical research decisions, medical decisions are being made, science decisions are being made. And if we don't have representation in those decisions, then they will be made without us, and we might not be on the positive end of those decisions. So if nothing else, we need to be in those rooms where those decisions are being made. And to do that, we need to get our STEM degrees and be in those rooms.
Yeah, so there's work to be done at home as well. What are your professional ties with Belize? Any at all?
Yeah, that's where I feel, I really feel like I've let my background down. I don't have currently professional ties. I mean, I do have friendships and familial ties to Belize, but that's been more difficult. As I've built my career here in the U.S., I've gotten involved in many things, but are largely in the U.S. and in some cases in other countries, but less so in Belize. And I really would want to be able to do whatever I can to have Belize be the beneficiary of my expertise and my experience, if it can enhance, the next generations coming up.
So maybe your conversation here might be, again, the way to segue into doing something more definitively with Belize.
Absolutely. And I will say that, there are every now and again, I will run across a student whose parents are from Belize and they're doing STEM or in, rare cases from Belize. And I seek them out and we talk and we chat and I really try to be there as a mentor. So I've tried to do that here, but, formally, I think there's more that many of us can do in the diaspora. There was a period of time when we did a few things, but I think there's a lot more that we can do, more formal programs.
So I look forward to hearing some more about that in the near future, Avery.
Yes, now that we've recorded this, we have to do it.
Yeah. Any word of advice for those science and research students out there who may wish to explore opportunities outside of Belize?
Yes, I think one of the challenges that many people, particularly those who are outside the U.S., but also in the U.S., don't have a full understanding of what the paths are to, getting a STEM degree or getting a PhD or going to graduate school. And I think, one of the things that you can do is reach out to people like me, to others that you are aware of, because there are opportunities to do and get STEM degrees outside of Belize, where you don't have to pay for it, and it's fully covered by the universities. And so I think we're losing out on taking advantage of those opportunities because we don't have that information. So find out, as they say, Google is a friend, and there's lots of opportunities to be gained by exploring. Follow your passions. That's what I did. In the end, the passion for doing research, and I've been fortunate to be able to do what I do now.
Well, unfortunately, I would love for this conversation to continue, but I'm getting the signal that it's time for me to wrap things up here with you, Avery. So I really want to thank you for having joined us in tonight's dialogue. I'm so proud of you, if I can say that again. I'm really, really proud of you. And I wish you well as you continue to do this important research in all of these very critical areas. And please do make that connection with Belize to be able to allow our Belizean young people to learn from you,
Yes, and thank you for having me on the program. This is, as I said, a true honor for me, and now I can check that off my list. Thank you again.
Okay, we'll take a final break and be right back. for staying tuned into Dialogue with the Diaspora. We've come to the end of another interesting and inspiring dialogue. It's pure music to my ears to learn of all the outstanding scientific achievements of Belizean-born Dr. Avery August in the fields of cancer and immune research. We celebrate him and hope that he serves as an inspiration to other young Belizeans. Thank you for watching. Dialogue with the Diaspora will be back next Thursday at 7 p.m. right here on CBTV and on Colorblind's Facebook page. Do enjoy the remainder of your evening. Good night.